Welcome to Dan Rafael and Gareth Davies. I'm Gareth Davies. He's Dan Rafael. Please make a noise. That's Dan the man. It's show 11. It's our 11th chat in lockdown, Dan, but this time exclusively for our millions, if not billions of viewers now.
Maybe thousands.
Maybe thousands. We are going to answer some questions, and I have got a really good one for you to start because you like these questions. Right. Mixed memorabilia sounds like one of your Friday fan freaks. These with your old chats, which I loved, by the way. And
this
maybe
would be like the video version.
The video, but maybe this makes up for a little bit that we're doing it, you know. And one of the things I would say actually before I start is, if you are watching this, just ping Dan and I questions at any time, and say they're for your chats. We'll collate them. So if we have to do a show where we're answering 50 questions, that's fine. Like Dan used to do, Pay the Man Shirley, you know, on his Friday. It was Friday Freak Night, wasn't it?
For the Friday Freak Chat, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. It was brilliant. And they were great. Do you know what was nice about that? It was kind of a time, Dan, before fight fans used to come on and just be deliberately arseholes. Do you know what I mean? That
it was also for the most part, it was before Twitter became like such a big thing in boxing.
Yeah.
So it was a place for people to sort of congregate, and I was sort of like the ringleader, so to speak. And you know, when we finished doing them at ESPN, I went back and I counted, you know, because they kept them in a you could just go to a page and see the entire list of all of them. I did something like almost 800 chats over that, you know, 15-year period of time. Yeah. Or actually, it was really more like 13 years because we hadn't done them for the last, you know, year and a half or so. So that just shows you I was doing more than one. I averaged like more than one a week over the year because sometimes I would do two in a week.
But the best thing about it was question, ping, answer, question, ping, Pay the Man Shirley. And I actually, because I used to watch the stream of it afterwards, or you'd send it. And it was great.
The goal was
great.
Have some fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully provide some entertainment. Give some people some answers to like legit questions, my opinions, and also give the folks that were involved who were participating, you know, post some of their opinions so they could, you know, whether it was a pick of a fight or their thought about a particular issue or fighter or whatever was going on. And, you know, it was great fun. And I have to say, you know, even though we hadn't done them for a while, I could never go to a fight and not have somebody in the hotel
said they joined in,
or in the casino or wherever we were, or you know, say something to me about the chat. In fact, people would come up to me and they would introduce themselves. I'd be walking like in the MGM, for example, going from my room to like the media center, and someone would recognize me and come over to me and talk a little boxing, which was always cool. And I would stop for you know, a couple of minutes and we would talk about boxing. But the person would introduce themselves to me as whatever their handle was. I'm Billy from, you know, from Las Vegas, or I'm Jimmy from, you know, Miami, and they would introduce themselves as that particular name. And that was cool. I must have met, I mean, over the years, hundreds of people that would do that all the time. And
you know, the funny thing is, as you say, it's only like 3 years ago you were doing it, but it feels like another age in the good old days, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, it does.
You know?
All right, so let's get to that. We do our audio video chat question Q&A.
Yeah, so the audio video chat question Q&A. First one is from Mixed Memorabilia. You'll love this. The 115 pounds division is hot right now.
Yeah.
So many good fights to be made in that weight class. I'd like to see, and I'm going to ask because I know you love this division as well. Gonzalez versus Estrada 2, yeah.
Yeah.
Estrada versus Ring Versailles 3, and Cajas versus Tanaka, and both I'd these. I can't really understand this guy's English, but there we go. And both of these, he's corrected it. And both of these to get in with Gonzalez, Ring Versailles, and Estrada.
Okay, one at a time. So the first one was the rematch between
Gonzalez and Estrada.
All right, so Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, Juan Francisco Estrada 2. All right.
That's on, isn't it? That's going to happen, isn't it?
Well, I was going to say, that's a fight that's probably going to happen. That's a fight that Eddie Hearn who has, his involvement with both guys at the moment, has been talking about trying to make next. It's an obvious fight. It's a fight that I've wanted to see for a long time. They had their first fight, if my memory serves, they fought in the 108-pound division when Roman Gonzalez was the champion there. And it was a sensational fight. Roman won a close fight, very competitive fight that took place in Los Angeles. And I've wanted to see a rematch ever since. They've both gone on to do a lot of other great things since then. Strada became a unified flyweight champion. We all know that Roman has, had moved up in weight, won other titles. It makes a lot of sense to do that fight. In those weight divisions, guys don't make a huge amount of money. But if you're going to make a fight, that's probably the fight that can make either guy the most amount of money because it's such a fan-friendly fight. They both have pretty good names for those weight classes. Gonzalez, he was already a Hall of Famer before what happened late February when he beat Kal Yafai, to win another title in that weight class. So that's a brilliant rematch, and I think it will probably happen. It's just a matter of whenever Eddie Hearn and Matchroom get their shows going. I would imagine that would take place here in America.
Before we talk about, or I ask you about Estrada and Ring Versailles 3, do you think, I had Chocolatito winning the first fight with Ring Versailles in New York, by the way.
So did I.
By a round, yeah.
I don't remember my score, but that was a fantastic, absolute bloody war.
It was.
A lot of people picked it as their fight of the year. To me, it was in the top, 1 or 2 or 3 for that year. Just a brutal, fantastic fight.
Yeah, obviously something dented in Chocolatito in that contest because the second fight, there's no doubt about it. Ring Versailles cleaned him up, didn't he?
Knocked him out.
He banjoed him. He banjoed him. Yeah. So, Estrada against Ring Versailles 3.
Okay, they've also fought before, and if I'm not mistaken, they've split the 2 fights.
Correct.
Third fight, I think that the more talented fighter is probably Estrada, but you can't really count out Sarungvasai because he's got so much determination. He's such a strong physical.
He's a little bull.
He is. That's exactly. He's like a fire hydrant with arms, and he just never. Yeah. And look, those 3 guys matched them up, and they're probably going to make for good fights regardless. They're probably the 3 best of that weight area over the last several years. Sarungvasai, they've all kind of been a little bit inactive-ish because the sport has slowed down and they weren't the most active before. Rungvisai, I think he's only had the 1 fight that was back in, he fought several months ago in Thailand, but now is looking to come back, back to America. And, he's with Eddie in Matchroom USA. To me, I think that they're going to do the Roman Gonzalez rematch against Estrada first before Sarungvasai would get the opportunity to fight either of those guys again. But if the fight with Estrada happened again between Sarungvasai and Estrada, I would lean towards Estrada, but not with hugely strong conviction.
Look, it's going to be too long an answer with one question here, but Ancajas and Tanaka as well, okay? Another very...
to me, honestly, that to me is not a hard pick. Tanaka probably wipes the floor with Ancajas.
So, to round all this off, rather than Gonzalez getting in with Ancajas and Estrada again and Ring Versailles with Ancajas and Tanaka, who's the number 1 in all of this for you?
Who
will become the number 1 in all of this?
Roman Gonzalez looks so good against Yafai. I know he's older. He just turned 33 years old this week. That's ancient for a guy in the 115-pound weight division. But of those guys, he's the one that's going to the Hall of Fame. The other fighters have been excellent for a number of years, but I don't think they've reached that level. It's hard for me to pick against Gonzalez. I think he would do much better against Sarungvasai in the 3rd fight. Look, I thought he won the 1st fight. Stuff happens. He got knocked out in the 2nd fight. But it's not like Sarungvasai has lit the world on fire since then. And Estrada, is a super talented guy also and has been in some good fights and, probably would be right there, nip and tuck with all of them. They're all like pick 'em fights. They're all flip a coin. And if you stuck a gun to my head, Gareth, I'm going with Chocolatito Gonzalez.
Yeah, and the reason why you are is because what we saw in that fight with Khalid Yafai was Chocolatito working someone out and that ability to spring in and out of range with, it's almost like he's got springs in his heels.
He also still has power that makes guys have to watch out for it, even though...
he has all of those things. Remember those Jack in the boxes? He's in and then he's back in the box. He's out and he's back in the box. And
He's a special fighter.
He is, and he is a very, very special fighter. And when people were talking about the undefeated records of Floyd Mayweather, we were all kind of saying, "Excuse me, you're laying the tarmac here over Chocolatito. You're turning him flat because there's a guy over there I think he was 52-0 at the time or something, or 46-0 or 47-0. An extraordinary guy who climbed up. He can never climb up to welterweight because he's about 5'1", and you know, it weighs your arm when he's wringing wet. Do you know what I mean? So
Roman Gonzalez is one of those guys that was going to be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. He will go down in history, you know, in those smaller weight classes from 105 to like 112. You know, I know he's fighting at 115 now, but you know, among the top, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 guys in the history of the sport. You know,
right.
and we'll talk modern because you know, we said this on another show. I'm not going to get into like the legacy of a Jimmy Wild, the great flyweight champion, but of the modern time of like, say, you know, the last 50 years in those weight classes. The guys that are at the top of the mountain in no particular order are Roman Gonzalez, Ricardo Lopez, and you know, maybe Ivan Calderon, you know, at 105. Yeah. I mean, they're the 3 guys to me who are Hall of Fame level guys. Ricardo Lopez is already in the Hall of Fame. I've been voting for Calderon. He should get in at some point, I think. He won every round basically of every fight except the ones that he lost, which is only a couple of fights in his career. And Chocolatito Gonzalez.
What's he doing now? Do you see Calderon anywhere?
Calderon, last I knew, was he had been doing some TV commentary on beIN Sports when they were doing fights. They would go to the studio in Miami.
Wow.
In the gym, he would help train some guys. He was having a good existence post boxing. You know, a nice, friendly guy, and
oh yeah,
never a puncher. But you know, the old saying when Ivan Calderon was defending his titles: "Death, taxes, and Calderon by lopsided decision."
Correct. I just always remember how it's just so technical, just and so tough. So tough. Those guys, where do they come from? All these tough guys, you know, it's just incredible.
What Calderon did was so much more impressive. First of all, he's an Olympian, had that great pedigree. Miguel Cotto's Olympic teammate in 2000. When you know, having met Ivan Calderon in person many times and talked to him and this and that, you know, us 105-pound fighters, they're small guys, obviously. He was even small by 105-pound standards.
Yeah.
Very small person, but the way he would just outbox guys was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Few more questions. Maybe a couple more because these are very good questions. Matt Lewis, Changing Tack, says, do you think we'll see a significant change in the cost of pay-per-view boxing or tickets to boxing events in the new post-lockdown world? Let me break that up first of all. Is pay-per-view going to go up? My small answer, yes.
The price, you think?
Yes.
See, I disagree with you about that, and I say that
going up in the UK for Joshua and Fury.
I say that about, well, that's a special kind of fight. I mean, but in general terms, again, if Bob Arum from Top Rank is to be believed, he says he thinks he would like to try to bring it down because it has gone out of hand. I mean, as I've made the point before in various places where I've talked about this topic, in America, top pay-per-views were like $50, maybe $55 for a long time. And then out of nowhere, they suddenly were like $80. They never even stopped at like 60 or 65 or 70. And, you know, it got to a point where people got to that price where like, you know what, I'm just going to steal the signal. And so the piracy has become so rampant. But I do think if they were able to bring it back to a more manageable level, that it would make people think twice before they would just outright steal the signal. So I hope Bob was right, and he will make an effort to bring the price of the pay-per-views down, at least the ones that he's involved with.
Early in the lockdown, he was saying that, but you know, Bob, yesterday he was lying to us, and today.
Listen, and economic things do change. The situations do change. You know, I don't know. I think pay-per-view in general, though, is, you know, unless it's at the upper echelon, super elite level of the sport, is probably a dying proposition because it costs too much, and it's so iffy what you can bring back because of the piracy and the interest from the public. You got to really make a special fight. And Fury versus Joshua obviously falls into that category.
Oh, definitely. The other thing on the second part of this question, which was asked in one question, is the tickets. And for me, I mean, I found this incredible, and I do need to completely stand this up, but I heard that the tickets for the Raiders in Los Angeles, in Las Vegas,
yeah.
Sleek Black Stadium, is $600 a ticket.
I mean, they don't have. I'm sure there's more than one price point.
No, I think an average ticket is 600 because obviously they want the tourists to come and watch a game.
Sure.
And the casinos will buy them all anyway and give them away to their high rollers. So,
well, the thing to think about that also is this: if you go to a football game, you don't go by yourself. So it's not just $600 and you just go to the game. You're going with your buddy, you're going with your wife, you're going with your kid. So it's usually at least 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. Yeah. So the tickets, and then there's the parking, and then there's the concessions. Nobody's going to go to a football game and not have something to eat or something to drink. It gets to a certain point, Gareth, especially with technology, in terms of the way people have their TVs or their computers or their phones. You can, even with a beautiful big screen TV, you could actually buy a whole setup for what it would cost you to bring a family of 4 to the football game, and you can watch it in the comfort of your own home. The picture is beautiful, and whether it's a football game or a boxing event or whatever, you can fill your fridge up with whatever kind of,
And what would you have for dinner?
I'll let you know later.
Okay.
All right, next question.
But what I would say to that, Bob spoke to me about the Raiders Stadium the other day and said that is a viable venue for Wilder and Fury, by the way, that stadium.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me.
Even if that there's still social distancing at the end of the year, and I don't think there will be, Dan. He said we could get 15,000 in there, 3 seats apart. We could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, next question. And I think we might make this the last question, okay? Because there's several things in it. Because there's 3 questions in one. And it's from Jono Rauch. Thank you, Jono, by the way. And in here, actually, he's got a picture of, I'm not sure who he's with, but he's there. And he's got a picture of Joshua and Fury. So you know what this is going to be about.
Yes, I do.
Right. You go first on this for this first one. What's the best show you have ever been to?
The best overall show?
You've ever been to?
That means I have to remember the exact undercard, don't I?
You can answer whatever you want.
I mean, the best, people have always asked, like, what's the best fight you've been to? And obviously, I always say Diego Corrales against Jose Luis Castillo, the first fight in 2005 for the lightweight title. But that was the fight. The undercard fight that night was a Juan Manuel Marquez fight, who obviously is a great Hall of Fame level fighter. But the match itself was nothing spectacular. So that's just a one fight. I mean, there was a few. There was a Pacquiao fight that, to my memory, that had a fantastic co-feature between there was the Australian fighter Hussein and Jorge Arce. They fought, I believe it was in a flyweight title fight of some kind. That was an extraordinary undercard fight that was on the pay-per-view. That made it for a great show. There was, when Danny Garcia fought Marcos Maidana in a 140-pound fight. Or no, I take that back. Danny Garcia fought Lucas Matisse. That was like a big-time fight that they were able to make for the co-feature of one of the Mayweather fights. And I think it was when he fought Canelo. And that was a huge show. And, granted, the main event was not a great fight because Mayweather totally dominated. So it's hard to say just in terms of like the overall action for action. I'll say this, though. Now, I didn't cover this fight, and I didn't go to the fight, but I remember watching it.
You've chosen 5 so far, Dan, yeah?
No, but hold on. I chose 2. The best pay-per-view ever, and again, I know it's not the exact question.
Hey, the man, Shirley.
I didn't go to the fight, and it was a great Don King pay-per-view card years ago in the 90s called Revenge of the Rematches, which featured 4 big rematches, with the main event being the rematch between Julio Cesar Chavez and Frankie Randall. And it was a show. Now, again, I didn't cover it, but that's up there. For a show I did cover, I'm going to give you one that I did cover. It was another Don King fight.
How many
Hold on. Had 8 world title fights on the show, and a lot of good ones. There was Mike Borga against Corey Spinks for the undisputed welterweight title. You had Bernard Hopkins against Joppy for the undisputed middleweight title. They had Hasim Rahman against John Ruiz, and there was some judo world title fight on there. I mean, it was like, it set the record for the most world title fights on the show. And I remember saying to Bobby Goodman, who was Don King's matchmaker.
I loved Bobby. Oh,
the best. I was very close to Bobby.
So many stories, always.
I said, Bobby. Now they had the whole show was just 8 12-round championship fights. No 4-rounders, no 6-rounders, no preliminaries, just starting off with the title fights. I said, Bobby, make sure, that you have orange juice in the press room for breakfast because we're going to be there so long, because it was just such a long show. But it was a fun event, even if it wasn't fight of the year fights on the show, but it was a really good time. And, when he wanted to, no one could put together a show like Don King.
It's funny, Don King appeared in the ring when I watched the Duran and Leonard fight last night. At the end, there he was. And another story, you mentioned Bobby Goodman there, by the way, since we're on this stuff. One day I rang Bobby Goodman. I think the Rumble in the Jungle was 74. So I think it was 2004, Bobby. Has Bobby departed us now?
No, Bobby's still very much.
Well, I rang Bobby. I think I rang Bobby it might have been the 30th, I think it was 2009, the 20th. For some reason, I did a big piece on the 35th anniversary because we thought Ali was going to die then, yeah? And I rang Bobby up. We talked about the Rumble in the Jungle, yeah? Because obviously he was out there. 3 hours down, we were still talking. And he was telling me about the ropes and that he was telling me the real stories behind it all. Because Bobby knew that, thing is with Bobby, he never wanted you to ruin the myth of the stories that were out there, but he let you know. He had a photographic memory for every detail of the 7 weeks that they were out there, it was extraordinary. What a great character. Where is he right now?
Just so they know.
You've spoken to him recently. You've spoken to him.
He once in a while, I used to talk to him all the time. He's been retired now for a number of years. We still will every now and again, we'll email with one another. People should know that, one of the great privileges of the jobs that we have is the fighters that you get to meet and know and the events you get to cover is you meet so many interesting people that aren't as famous, let's say. And one of the people in that group that were just people that made a big impression on my life and who I've known since I started was Bob Goodman, who I met him. He was the matchmaker for Don King. Just to give you an example, the kind of like when I met him, he was bringing up, a couple of years later, like he would say, make sure you get to the show early because we got these great prospects on the show. And talking about, again, these are kids that were like 2-0, 3-0, Devin Alexander, who went on to become a two-weight world champion, a young Bermain Stavern, who again, he didn't become a great heavyweight, but at 2-0, you had no idea what he's going to be.
He was the WBC champion.
Won a heavyweight title, and there was a number of young fighters like that they had that, Elio Rojas was a young featherweight who went on to win a world title. But anyway, these were guys that Bobby was building, and that's just 3 examples. There's a ton of them. So he worked with Don for many years and later retired. But before that, he was involved with boxing for Madison Square Garden in New York when they had their own promotional entity. His father is Murray Goodman, the Hall of Fame publicist. And Bobby was a matchmaker and also involved in the PR end at various times. I mean, one of the great old school characters in boxing. And I'll tell you a quick story. When my grandmother...
Got to be quick, because I haven't even given my choice of event yet.
All right, well, we'll get to that. We got time. When my grandmother died many years ago, but when she turned 90 years old, we had we had a birthday party, and our whole family went down, and she lived in South Florida in a retirement community that was across the highway from where Don King had his office in Deerfield Beach, Florida, with the giant American flag and the big DK, crown logo on the top of the building.
I know it well.
I was close to Bobby, so I said to him, I'm going to be in town, let's get together. Let's have lunch or we'll go hang out, whatever. So he said, yeah, why don't you come to the office? I'll show you around. So one day I took an afternoon before, we were down there for a few days, and I went over to the office. Don wasn't even there, wasn't supposed to be there. Went in, hung out with Bobby, gave me the grand tour at DKP. I remember he was there doing some business with Norman Stone, who was the manager for John Ruiz at the time. They were signing some kind of contracts for whatever fight he was going to do. Had a great time. And as I'm getting ready to leave, and if you've ever been to DKP, Don King's personal parking space was right in front of the door. If there was no car there, you knew Don wasn't in the office. If the car was there, you knew he was there. So when I got there, Don wasn't there. When I went to leave, Don's car was there. So Bobby said, the car's here. Let's go up and say hello to Don. So we took me upstairs to Don's private office, and Don took me into like the inner sanctum of his private office suite, as well as his own personal office. And, we talked for a little bit. And then Don said, I'm going to give you the tour. So then I got a second tour that I just got from Bobby Goodman, but I got from King, and he brought me to every single spot in the office. And there's this great big boardroom. And in the boardroom where they would have their meetings about whatever fights and events they were doing, on the wall were these pictures of Don King with every famous actor, actress, president, the Queen of England, you name it, the Pope, Michael Jackson, famous baseball players and football players and boxers, you name it. And so Don's taking me around, and this is just in one room in this very large office compound. And we stopped at every single picture, and Don told me the story of him with Sammy Davis and him with Bob Hope and him with, whatever. Jimmy Carter, him with Anwar Sadat, the former president of Egypt. And he gave me the story on every single picture and took me around, showed me the video library, showed me this, showed me that. Unbelievable. I was there, Gareth, probably 2 hours with King having that conversation as he took me around the office. He had a blast. It was extremely enjoyable. I will never forget that. And, Don King, whatever you want to say about him, he had amazing energy and had a great story. Single thing you could ask him about.
Well, I mean, just to kind of cap off what we're talking about is, I think that's the sad thing about today when people publish in 140 characters their view of you, or they don't know the amount of hours and time and just the amount of time you spend in your life being involved and reading and then meeting these people and just studying the history of the thing we do, because it's a very deep and rich and tapestried history beyond writing a report on a fight or getting the fight right when you're judging it. Or there's so much, there is in every sport and there is in every field. But you said it just now, there are a lot of characters in this sport. There are chancers, there are all kinds of people, but they found their way into the sport. And it's this mishmash of humanity that sometimes people get squeezed out and they're gone and then they're back, and they're from lawyers to promoters to accountants to agents to fighters to trainers to guys that have just turned up in a gym and become part of the entourage to the musicians around them, the stars that they get then surrounded with, how they change through their life. And then there's us bolted on top of it.
There's also a lot of the TV executives and the fight managers.
The managers that, I mean, it's so layered. Right. Mayweather Pacquiao. It was amazing. Right. Let's move on.
Was that a question?
Yeah. No, that was my answer to the best show I've ever been to. Because it was amazing, because it brought so many things together. No, you're not.
Mayweather Pacquiao was the best show you've ever been to?
Well, I'm just saying it was, so I want to move on.
Not in terms of the fights, though.
No, well, listen, let me choose what I want to choose. Yeah, it's the Dan Rayfield show.
I'm just trying to understand your context for selecting that.
All right, okay, right. Let me say
the reason I say that, Gareth, is because, your opinion's your opinion, fine, but I know you well enough to know that you didn't pick that because it was some kind of, memorable, great all-time main event.
I'll tell you.
The undercard was terrible.
No, the best. No, because of what Ricky Hatton did when he came to America, and the reason, and I say because the whole effect of the work I was doing that week, from radio to newspaper, and we did a 4-page broadsheet. I wrote a 4-page broadsheet sponsored supplement on Mayweather versus Hatton on the day of the fight. We've never done that for boxing before. We had never. I wasn't thinking
of the amount of attention of how good the show was.
No, but I think what it meant for me to cover it and how big it felt in the world, and it just felt so enormous. I don't remember sleeping all week.
I hear you. I know I did. I don't even know. Dozens and dozens of radio and TV interviews around the world. The highlight of that, I was, with Manny Pacquiao in his dressing room. Before he went out to the weigh-in, and he had they delivered him a handwritten note from Jerry Jones, who was the owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, that was amazing. That was
wishing him luck. I was blown away when he said, he showed it to me. I took a picture of it. Because he had the reason for that, they had struck up a friendship because Manny had fought twice at the Cowboy Stadium that Jerry owned.
Well, let me tell you a story.
That, you don't forget.
And that day, when I met Jerry Jones at that Joshua Clottey fight, and had a tour of the stadium, which is like a giant spaceship has landed in the middle of a huge field. It's like a city. It's like a spaceship city. Jerry Jones said to me, because he found out I was British, he said, "You see the doors of the stadium that open?" He said, "I modelled those on the Twin Towers of Wembley Stadium in England."
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. He said, because he wanted to tell me, he said, I've been to look at Wembley Stadium, and I love the Twin Towers there, which are very famous outside. And he said, I wanted Twin Towers here as well. Lovely man, Jerry Jones.
I always say to my good friend Carl Moretti from Top Rank, who's a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan, but I'm a New York Giants fan. I say, I'm so torn about your fanhood of the Cowboys. I said, because I love Jerry, but I hate the Dallas Cowboys. So I jokingly say how torn I am. But I'll tell you a funny story about Cowboy Stadium real quick. It is the site we were talking about, like the old chats I used to do for ESPN. It wasn't the longest chat I ever did, but was one of the top 2 or 3 longest chats I ever did, sitting in the main entrance of Cowboy Stadium on the day of the weigh-in, because our hotel was like 20 miles away. So it was a good half-hour ride.
Was that the Gaylord? Was that the Gaylord?
It was the Gaylord Hotel, which is a good 20
What a strange name for a hotel, though, really.
Yeah, it's a good 20 minutes from the stadium.
Yeah.
So I had to go to the stadium super early on the day of the weigh-in because I was doing some television appearances on various ESPN shows. And it was going to be when it normally was. And then, of course, the weigh-in was going to be. So it made no sense for me to go to the stadium, do TV appearances, go all the way back to my hotel, do the chat, and then go all the way back to the stadium. So when I got there and I did my TV stuff, when I was done, I found like a janitor or an office person there, and I explained to them what was up. I had my credential, and I said, listen, if it's possible, do you think I could have like a little small area where I could just, plug in my laptop and maybe a chair, and, I told them, they're like, yeah, no problem. So the guy went and got me set up, and I sat there and I chatted all the way up until the time before the TV coverage for the weigh-in. I took a break. I went with my old colleague, Brian Kenny, and we did a couple of things for ESPN TV. Then I came back and I did another bit of the chat, and then came the weigh-in. But I think all in all, I did like a 7-hour chat that day. And there was so much interest. You can't do a chat if people aren't sending in questions and comments.
Well,
in the Dallas Cowboys, like the atrium when you first walk into the stadium, it was wild, and it was empty.
Well, while you were doing that, I went back to the Gaylord with the boxing historian Burt Randolph Sugar, and we sat in another atrium. It had a giant atrium with a botanical garden with an air raid. It had a particular ambience in there for all the botanical plants. Do you remember?
Yeah, I definitely remember it.
And we sat amongst these giant plants, Randolph Sugar and I, smoking these giant cigars he'd brought with him. It was fantastic. Look, you're allowed a short.
You talk about characters. You talk about characters. Bert's the ultimate character.
Oh yeah, I went to see him in. So for another day, we'll talk about going to see Bert in Chappaqua, next to the Clintons' house in Chappaqua.
And if you remind me, when you tell me that story, I'll tell you how I found my dad and Bert Sugar getting drunk together at a Las Vegas bar, which I had no idea was happening.
Brilliant. I know. I got drunk on vodka. He loved Grey Goose vodka, that guy. He was very, very great mentor to us both,
Yes, sir.
Right. You're not allowed a long answer to this one because I've had enough and I'll go to bed in a minute.
All right. Sounds good.
Right. Favorite boxing venue? You can choose 2 if you have to.
I don't need to choose 2. I'll say I'll cut it to the East Coast of the United States and the West Coast of the United States. I have to say, on the West Coast, my favorite venue was Mandalay Bay Event Center. It was built with boxing in mind. It's fantastic. I love the hotel. I love the venue. I covered a lot of big fights there. I wish they used it more. It became less of a venue for fights when their companies, when the MGM company bought the Mandalay Bay company, so they would move most of their bigger fights to the MGM Grand Garden, which I love also. But to me, Mandalay Bay on the West Coast. And on the East Coast, while there's nothing like the history of Madison Square Garden, I really love the Barclays Center. I mean, all respect to the Garden folks, but the Barclays Center is a beautiful building. I've covered most of the events they've had there since they opened their doors. I think they've had like around 38 events maybe or something like that. I probably covered about 34 of them, thereabouts. Great group of people that run that place, and a beautiful building and a great spot to watch the fight.
Well, I'm going MGM Grand because I love the huge media room we get to work in there. It's a stone's throw down to our seats. They've worked out the route there and back really brilliantly. The periods, I've probably covered more fights in Vegas there, both UFC, because Anderson Silva and Vitor Belfort as well. Loads of really big UFC fights were there, but also that entire period with Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather as well, which was amazing. I've got a soft spot for that venue, and I don't like the T-Mobile because I don't like the media centers there very much.
I'm not a T-Mobile fan at all.
I'm looking forward to the Raiders Stadium and doing fights there, but MGM Grand, and if I have to pick another one, like you say, the historicity of Madison Square Garden is very difficult to beat, and you can feel history in the dust there. It's there, and I've loved the nights there, and they're a very knowledgeable crowd that I love there. That's what I really like about it. But you know what? I have got to say, walking out of the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, and then just smelling the Atlantic Sea there on the eastern starboard, I felt very buzzed up before coming out of there at 10 o'clock at night, with the smell
Boardwalk
of the
Hall hosted a lot of significant fights, and they remodeled it. They had gone a period of time where they didn't have any fights because they did a big renovation, and it did get a little better after the renovation. Not a bad venue. One of the good things about when there was fights in Atlantic City made it easy on me personally is I would just drive to there for the most part. Because for me, from my house to Atlantic City,
4 hours, yeah.
No, even less than that. It's about maybe 3.5 hours, 340. To there, 212 miles or something like that from my driveway to the parking garage at the casino. Where I would stay either at Bally's or Caesars, which were usually the two of the host hotels, which was just a very short, like maybe a block or two walk up the boardwalk to the actual arena. That's a historical place. They haven't had a lot of big boxing in Atlantic City for a number of years.
I miss it though, Dan. It would be great if it came back, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in January of this year, I actually covered back-to-back shows in Atlantic City. One was a showbox card with
Clarissa?
That was at the at one of the casinos at the Hard Rock, right. And then next night they had I was at the Oceans Resort was the Clarissa fight, which is the old level, and then next door to that is the Hard Rock where Top Rank had the light heavyweight fight between Jesse Hart and Joe Smith. So they were not big shows, but the combination of the two of them, I went up and I just stayed, the one night and did both shows. But before that, though, Gareth, the last time I'd been to Atlantic City for a fight, I think was like Bernard Hopkins against Kovalev, which was like 2015 or something like that. I mean,
5 years ago, yeah.
Hadn't had a big fight in Atlantic City for a long time, and part of the reason was because the casinos are having so many issues with bankruptcies and just the general downturn of their economy there, that they were not putting up the money to bring those events there. So it's a real shame because it's such a historic location for so many big events over the years.
Fingers crossed, post-pandemic, we might get them right. Short answer, because I really have got to go, and I'm not really going to bed. I've got to do another interview. They'd never say that on TV shows, but you can say it on Zoom chat, video, fun things like this. Fury versus Joshua, obviously it's a long way off. It's probably 17, 18, maybe even 20 months away, if they ever do bloody fight. This person, I must name them because that would be unkind not to. They're asking, I will call their name up in a minute. It is Fury rather, being made too big a favourite for this fight that they're being made to fight?
Well, I haven't seen any actual odds on the fight yet, but I understand why Fury would be, and frankly should be the favorite. So I don't know what how big of a favorite he is perceived at the moment. But as you said, it's probably a number of months, and certain more importantly the number of months. But each guy's going to have at least one fight in between. So it's very hard to say what we think now will be the same, a year and a half from now or whenever, or a year from now when they actually hopefully get into the ring and fight each other. So, what the odds are today to me mean absolutely nothing. Odds don't mean anything to me even the day of the fight, frankly. So to think about this fight odds-wise, and we're still this far away, I mean, who cares, honestly? Who cares?
John O'Rouch asked that question. You've got to favour Fury to beat Joshua based on their last few performances, in my view. Dan?
Agreed.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, sir.
It's always a pleasure to chat to you.
Always.
Don't forget, send Dan and myself your questions, because it's great fun answering them all, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I love it.
Listen, a tiny crowd in Atlantic City might feel like an enormous crowd in a couple of months' time, Great to speak to you, my friend.
Have a good night.
Good night.